Welcome to a new deep dive. Today, we're unpacking a concept that, first glance might seem like a compliment, but actually carries, well, profoundly harmful implications for millions. We're talking about the model minority myth. You might have encountered this term before, maybe in discussions about success or immigration. But what does it truly mean? Where did this idea even come from, and why is it so problematic? Our goal today is really to cut through the surface, understand its core characteristics, its origins, its far-reaching consequences, and maybe some practical ways we can begin to challenge it.
Yeah, and what's truly, I think, illuminating from the research we've gathered is how this seemingly positive label can actually be used to mask deep systemic issues and create immense, often unspoken pressure. We've compiled some really excellent source material that helps us, pull back the curtain on this complex social construct.
Okay, so let's dive in. What is this myth, really? At its core, the model minority myth characterizes certain minority groups, most notably Asian Americans, as, uniformly successful, hardworking, intelligent, law-abiding, economically prosperous. You get the picture. But the material we reviewed, it makes it abundantly clear this isn't a positive portrayal, it's actually a deeply damaging social construct.
Exactly. And if we look at the historical context, the term itself actually emerged in the United States back in the 1960s, which, as you know, was a pivotal time deeply rooted in the civil rights movement. The narrative, as our sources highlight, was specifically used to contrast Asian Americans with other racial minorities, particularly Black Americans.
Okay. So the implicit message was kind of like, highlight the perceived success of Asian Americans, despite historical discrimination, almost suggesting that if one group could succeed through hard work and obedience, then, well, others should simply be able to do the same.
Right, which completely sidesteps
The bigger picture.
the profound role of systemic inequality and the structural barriers that different groups face. It's a way of saying, look, they made it, so your struggles must be your own fault.
Yeah.
Which is, a deeply unfair and misleading conclusion.
Right. And the myth isn't just some label we hear about. Our sources show this myth actively operates in specific, kind of insidious ways. Like, one immediate impact is how it just erases the rich diversity within these communities. How does that happen?
Well, it creates this immense problem of homogenization. It unfairly bundles incredibly diverse ethnic groups, Chinese, Indian, Vietnamese, Korean, Filipino, you name it, into just one monolithic category, assuming they all share identical backgrounds, traits, experiences.
Okay, so it just flattens everything.
Totally. That immediately erases individual identity and unique struggles. And then, stemming from that, is an overemphasis on achievement. It just assumes all members excel academically or professionally, especially in fields like, say, STEM.
Right. But the cruel irony of that success narrative is the silencing of struggles. This myth effectively sweeps under the rug the very real challenges that members of these diverse groups face, things like poverty, significant mental health issues, or even like pervasive workplace discrimination. They just get ignored.
Yeah, they become invisible. And perhaps most problematically, it leads to the weaponization against other groups. The research details how this myth is often deployed to invalidate the grievances of other marginalized communities, subtly suggesting their struggles are due to a lack of effort, rather than deep-seated systemic injustice.
Well, the old wedge.
It's a classic divide-and-conquer tactic in racial discourse.
Really damaged. So understanding the origins and characteristics is one thing, but how does it actually impact real lives? The material we reviewed reveals some profound and honestly often heartbreaking consequences. For instance, it actively pits minority groups against each other, reinforcing a kind of racial hierarchy, and implying that racism can just be overcome by individual effort alone, completely ignoring those structural barriers we mentioned.
Absolutely. And this also has severe consequences for mental health and identity. I mean, imagine carrying the weight of an entire group's expected success on your shoulders. It creates this immense pressure to succeed, to avoid failure at all costs, which, as studies clearly indicate, can lead to anxiety, depression, and even, tragically, suicide.
Wow. Yeah, it's almost ironic, isn't it, how a seemingly positive stereotype could be so profoundly damaging. That pressure must be just immense. And it probably actively discourages seeking help, right?
Right.
Because doing so might be seen as shameful, or you're not living up to that unrealistic stereotype.
Exactly. The cultural expectation to embody this model can actually prevent individuals from seeking the help they desperately need. They might see it as a sign of weakness or failure. Furthermore, the myth hides socioeconomic disparities. Big time. It overlooks the working class or undocumented individuals within these communities, particularly, say, Southeast Asian and Pacific Islander communities who, in reality face significantly high poverty and low graduation rates.
Which directly contradicts that uniformly successful narrative.
Directly. It just papers over those realities.
And finally, it effectively excuses discrimination,
Yeah.
which is maybe one of the most insidious parts. Employers or educators might wrongly assume Asian Americans don't need support or representation.
Mm-hmm.
And this often manifests as what's known as a glass ceiling, that invisible barrier. It prevents many Asian Americans from advancing to top leadership roles, even when they're excelling in mid-level positions.
Mm-hmm. It's a subtle, insidious form of discrimination that's often overlooked precisely because of the myth.
And the impact isn't just societal, right? Our sources really underscore the immense psychological burden this myth places on individuals. One major concept the research highlights is stereotype threat. How does that specifically play out here?
Right. Stereotype threat. As the material explains, it's that nagging fear of confirming a negative stereotype about your group. But here, it's kind of flipped. It's the fear of not living up to the positive stereotype of the model minority. That anxiety, that pressure can ironically impair performance. It can create a self-fulfilling prophecy of underachievement, not despite, but often because of this so-called positive label.
That's really counterintuitive.
It is. And for those who do achieve success, we often see the pervasive shadow of imposter syndrome, where the pressure to meet these unrealistic standards leaves individuals feeling like frauds, constantly questioning their hard-won successes, even when all the evidence points to their genuine capability.
It sounds exhausting, just
No.
a constant pressure cooker. And then there's also cultural alienation mentioned.
Yes. That's where individuals feel this pressure to assimilate into, let's say, white standards of success, often at the expense of minimizing their own cultural heritage and identity, feeling like they have to choose.
And it's important to note this isn't just a U.S. thing, is it?
Not at all.
No.
The sources highlight examples beyond the U.S. In the UK, for instance, similar pressures can apply to Indian and Chinese British communities. In Canada or Australia, you see comparable narratives affecting Asian immigrants. And even in some African countries, minority groups like Asians or Lebanese might be subjected to similar kinds of stereotyping. It seems to be a global pattern, unfortunately.
Okay, so if this myth is so pervasive and, well, damaging,
Yeah.
how do we begin to counter it? What can we actually do? The sources offer some clear, actionable strategies. Where should we start?
Well, first, it's absolutely essential to acknowledge and celebrate the true diversity within these communities. Really push back against that lumping together. This is crucial for truly understanding the real experiences of individuals.
Okay, so break down the monolith. And stemming from that, I guess, we need to actively share real stories, not just the highlight reel of success, but stories of struggle, resilience, and the very real need for support that often goes unacknowledged.
Exactly. Humanize the experience beyond the stereotype. And critically, we must call out comparative narratives. Those attempts to pit racial groups against each other. We need to actively dismantle that divide and conquer strategy at its root.
Makes sense. Finally, the research emphasizes that we should push for inclusive policies that truly recognize intersectionality. How does understanding the different parts of a person's identity, like race and class or race and gender, combine to create unique experiences help us craft better solutions here?
Well, that's key, isn't it? The myth homogenizes, right? But intersectionality forces us to see the nuances. An Asian American woman might face different compounded challenges than an Asian American man. Or an undocumented Asian immigrant versus a third-generation professional. It's about recognizing the layered realities that the myth completely ignores, making sure support is truly tailored and effective, not just based on a broad, inaccurate stereotype.
Right. What we've explored today really shows just how complex and deeply embedded social constructs like the model minority myth can be. It's a powerful reminder, I think, that so-called positive stereotypes can be just as harmful as negative ones, because they mask real struggles and actually perpetuate inequality.
Absolutely. And this maybe raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider. How might understanding the model minority myth reshape the way you perceive success, struggle, and the need for support within various communities around you, both, globally and maybe right in your own neighborhood?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this conversation has given you a clear understanding, maybe a fresh perspective, on a critical, often misunderstood social issue.